every year.
There's a total disconnect now between the ruling group and the masses.
I hate psychology.
Clear out.
They're the same worm-like characters.
Analysts,
Fuck you with your stupid argument.
they should not bother us.
Democracy. All of this just works.
But for the generations that are coming.
Fully dynamic game engine.
A millennial video essayist.
Always support strength
Constant craving.
and identity.
I haven't yearned. They are a disease of our time.
Clear them out. You're voting for what your grandfather and father fought for.
I sit and yearn.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Longhouse, the weekly show for the sensible centrist. This week has been kind of interesting. I've been very busy this week, so we're going to do a bit of a news roundup. And Ludwig Path has also been good at keeping up with what's going on around the world. But I noticed that, I'm not sure where you live, Ludwig Path, but where I live, it got really hot again today. We tend to talk about the weather, so I figured we'd go back to the old style of talking about the weather for 5 minutes while people trickle in.
I think it's a nice warm up. No, we're reaching. I think that's called the Indian summer, isn't it? When you're getting summer temperatures in autumn, it seems to be worse. Actually, I was just wearing regular khaki pants and a t-shirt, and I was just sweating when I was walking home from work
it's
today.
It's more humid.
That's the problem. It was quite unpleasant, to be honest. I was actually weirdly hoping for things to get colder and to get inside and get a cup of hot chocolate and sit and watch the leaves fall down. But instead, you get this kind of humid, extremely hot weather. We have to change clothes and shower all the time. That's not really my thing.
Sort of bug resurgence. The bugs had like sort of started going back into sort of like dormancy for the autumn, but now they've been like violently awakened once more for like a couple of weeks, and they're all like flying around in a daze. So
you get a bug encore. They'll just do one number on us before they go back to sleep. I hope they stay that way for a while. I mean, the winter is likely, if it's like last time, it'll be pretty bad. Actually, I hope that this winter will be less cold than the last one. But I've been saying this for like the last 3 winters, and it seems to be getting worse every time. So
the last one was
I'll have to
bad.
brace myself. Yeah, I should get one of these. What do you call it? Like the snow shoveler. Machines.
The sort of diesel powered.
Yeah, I never considered it, but like last winter, I feel like I was caught with my pants down.
Same.
But,
Yeah.
it's
I
cool
might
to
have
burn
get one of
calories, but I feel like it's just a waste of time to have to stand there with a standard shovel and spend like 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a day doing this nonsense. It's not civilized.
Bill Wilson says I'm supposed to be actually doing work, but Walrus has the gall to stream. So I'm sorry for interrupting your work, Bill Wilson. But to be fair, we've been streaming at this hour for quite some time, and that's probably not going to change anytime soon. Speaking of, for any of you who were there, this week was the last episode of the Unpopular Opinions, which was an event, to put it mildly. It's a show that's giving me a lot of joy over the years, and hopefully, the community. I think A wrote something about it. The show is gone, but hopefully the community will live on, and we'll probably see something akin to UO pop up again some point. All right, it's been 5 minutes. Enough dilly-dallying. Let's get into the news here. So we wanted to start talking a bit about the Lex Fridman Trump interview. We've been sort of keeping tabs on Trump's appearances a bit, talking about what his chances are, how he presents himself this election cycle versus the last ones. And this interview was a pretty good one, I think. You have something you wanted to share. Let's bring that up on the screen.
We could just use the video because Lex Fridman is quite diligent with sorting them into topics here. So you could see on the Google bar now, sort of like this YouTube bar underneath.
Yeah,
every topic has been timestamped, and you can see how much time is spent on it. So it's easy for us to just go through the topics. But I mean, yeah, what did you think about this? Just as a complete impression from what you watched.
We did have a bit of a discussion about this before the stream, but I mean, I've never really liked Lex Fridman because I don't like his style. He comes across as, trying to seem smarter than the person he's interviewing, which leads to this weird thing that it seems like he's like a robot following a script rather than bouncing off of what his subject is doing. And I felt that a lot here. And my example to you was when he asks him about marijuana, right? He asks Trump's position on marijuana, legalizing marijuana, and Trump says something about, he goes into his like regular spiel about, we have a great plan drawn up, we have the best numbers, it's going to be amazing, something legalized, medical marijuana, etc. And then like he swerves into just saying, have you ever done ayahuasca? And it's just like, it's so off topic, instead of sort of just trying to press Trump on, well, actually, what is the plan? What are you actually considering here? Have you thought about the impact of sort of making marijuana more available? Having an actual conversation, it just becomes this weird. It's weird because Trump is still, even though we've said, he's a bit reduced from what he's been before, he's still a very charismatic and funny guy. And I feel like he's being hampered by Lex here.
Yeah, I mean, on the ayahuasca bit, this is like Joe Rogan's catchphrase, have you ever done DMT? But I guess he can't just steal it outright, so he has to ask, have you done ayahuasca? I mean, those two drugs are actually very similar. It's just different in the way that it's ingested. So the DMT is usually smoked, meaning it gives you like a quicker experience of maybe like 10 minutes to half an hour. That's more intense, and the ayahuasca is ingested orally, like, so that it has to go through the lining of the stomach, and it'll last for a couple of hours.
I mean, if you really want to see what I think is, I haven't seen many, but I think the worst Lex Fridman interview I've seen is the one where he interviews Todd Howard, because that's a robot talking to a man who's like contractually obligated to not talk about details of the thing he's talking about, and it sounds like two like language models trying to interact. It's insane.
Yeah, there's something AI about it. I mean, with the ayahuasca stuff just coming up, because if you know anything about Trump, he's a teetotaler. He doesn't even drink anything or touch drugs at all. So just asking him, have you ever done ayahuasca, just out of it's just like a gut reaction. It's instinct at this point. It's just something he just asks, but it doesn't even make any sense. I mean, like you said, with his kind of temperament and presentation, on some level, you could say that it's kind of like a Zen thing, but from another perspective, he feels almost sedated in his presentation. And I don't know. I said that he's trying to go for the same kind of ASMR market, in a sense, for people who are listening to that podcast, and people have talked about how when they listen to you, they're using you to as kind of sleep aid, not because you're boring, but like the voice quality of your delivery is comfortable. And I think like he's sort of going for the same thing. I remember one episode of the Lex Fridman show where he is interviewing like Rick Rubin. So you have like two of these Jews there California Jews who's trying to out-chill each other by this. They're both using the same voice affect and trying to do this ASMR thing. It's really bizarre to listen to, and they're talking about this sort of more abstract drug related, very high level stuff. As far as my impression of this thing, I mean, there's multiple layers to this. The first is sort of tactically from Trump's perspective. I don't think anything was achieved doing this interview here. I mean, who listens to Lex Fridman? Imagine like you're doing this to try to reach certain voters. Like I've had some discussions back and forth on Twitter in terms of like, okay, what should Trump actually try to be doing? And you have some of these what I call like the demographic doomer types who basically say that voting is just a function of race essentially, and whether Trump wins or not is just going to be a question of demographics and the weather on that current day or something. But to me, it seems like if he's taking the time out of his day to be interviewed by someone like Lex Fridman, you're appealing to more of this quote unquote independent audience, or more of that kind of podcast to Joe Rogan, quasi-libertarian. It's I don't know exactly what you want to call it, but it's enough of an established sphere of people who might actually be fence sitters, who might consider not voting or something, have bizarre beliefs in regards to maybe conspiracy theories, nutrition, ideology,
sure,
and
but
so on. And
if we use your model of like accepted sort of or these like rings of tiers of media, I would say that Lex Fridman is sort of, if not yet, it feels like he's very close to being in like tier 2, right? It's not mainstream media, but it's also not sort of the Wild West media.
I'm actually going to we're going to cover the Tenet Russia money, and like just based on the information I got there, I'm going to revise my model and then just basically merge tier 2 and 3. Because
really?
Apparently, like the Russia and the Jew stuff, it's just completely merged at this point. It's kind of just if they're taking money from Israel,
Dave
they're taking
Rubin
money
was
from
mentioned
Russia.
as one of the sort of the right-wing conspiracy accounts that supported Russia, which seems kind of weird because Rubin, considering his last name and his actions, is quite, he's aiming for something else.
Yeah, I have like a sort of Excel sheet that's kind of tall as a tree with the right-wing influencers that I suspect are shills or on the Russian payroll, and he was not on there because I just thought that he's just a shield for Israel. That's kind of the obvious thing, and that's the type of content that he does. It's in the standard Trump America-centric conspiracy sphere, very grifty in his sense, but I guess that's the part where there's very little integrity, I think, for Dave Rubin. He's a very interesting character. He's been bullied a lot, essentially. That's kind of, it seems to be his role, is just to get bullied, but he's in this space to just make money. That's the impression I get, and he certainly made a lot of that. But yeah, this might be a tier 3 in a sense, but I think it's tier 3 and not in the kind of in the Wild West sense, because he's one of these Lex Fridman is one of these enlightened centrist types, right? Meaning that you have podcasts like this where you just have people show up and you just let them say whatever they want, and you don't really challenge them on anything. And like that's what they think is balance in a sense. And you get sort of the same problem that you get with a lot of this free speech absolutist platforms, that you can get complete bullshitters on, and eventually you're just going to allow them to say whatever they like whenever they want to, and usually either they don't have the fortitude mentally or the competency to actually challenge them on their beliefs. And it's very much the same thing here. So, but people tune into these things either because they want to use them as sleep aid or because they want to get to know the person. So you get like a free, instead of the debate format or this kind of rally format, you get to have like a loose and relaxed conversation with Trump. I think that's what people wanted. And maybe
I think it's a third. I would sort of subcategorize it under the sleep thing. Like I would split that in half and say it's like half of it is sleep and half of it is like second monitor content. Have you ever heard that phrase before?
Yeah, so you're playing World of Warcraft and you're putting it on the second
Something
monitor.
like that, yeah. I can't do that because I have one monitor, so I can't play games and listen to stuff like that on the other monitor. Well, I could, I guess. I just have it minimized. But, yeah.
I have 3 monitors, so I can goon.
You've optimized it.
I can goon my content. Yeah.
You can goon Lex Fridman, yeah.
It's but I mean, they wanted to just see, okay, Trump, just let your guard down a little bit and relax and maybe just talk about something, see a version of Trump that they haven't seen, the relaxed guy who's just, you can go into a little bit more depth about the topics because there's no pressure. That's very much this podcast. Like, you will not be pressured by Lex Fridman. It's like one of these psychedelic retreats. You can just come and therapeutically say whatever you like. But of course, you didn't get that. You got the regular combative Trump, even though the guy he was talking to was not combative. He would just sort of let him jump around to any topic and say whatever he liked and didn't have any pushback or any relevant follow-up questions. And the people who, like even the people in the MAGA-tard sphere who were following up on this seems to parse this in that way. Like Jack Posibic on Twitter, for example, said that, oh yeah, Lex Fridman wasn't prepared for that one. Oh, you asked about January the 6th, so you weren't prepared to get owned like this. Like, they parse this as basically he's coming on the show to talk to some kind of CNN lib or something that's going to be snobby and fact check Trump or whatever. But it's kind of not, that's not the thing they're trying to do here. So from that perspective, I feel like Trump completely failed in terms of, okay, if you're doing this to catch some people who are fence sitters for the election, who might come and vote for Trump because they sort of seen the man behind the mask. Well, that didn't happen. I mean, and of course, the other side to this is that, okay, you just want more exposure and you want to appear, get Trump in there, make him be an alpha male and stuff. Even that sort of fell apart because he seems older now. And I felt like he was, I think everybody seems more spry next to Lex Fridman, who sounds sedated a lot of the time. But Trump also seemed almost kind of very slow in this interview. The speech was a little bit slurry. I mean, I thought it, we originally thought that was sort of a function of the Elon Musk call-in the problems with like his the Twitter Spaces, but even with this one, I could hear that he sort of slurs a little bit and seemed a little bit droopy in his appearance.
I think it's I don't think it's anything sort of medical. I think he's just getting a bit older.
Yeah, but he's pushing 80, right? Or is he 80 already?
Yeah,
and it's completely natural for an 80-year-old to have these issues. Like it's, and I think he's doing much better than most 80-year-olds. Yeah, he's doing much better than most 78-year-olds, but it will catch up to him as well. But okay, let's just look at some topics here. He was asked about Ukraine, and like his response to this one to Ukraine is basically, well, okay, you're just gonna wait and see what happens. It's a mystery box, trust the plan. That's his foreign policy. He didn't want to say anything about what he was going to do. It was just sort of, well, you're gonna have to see when I get in, then I'll find the solution. I don't think anybody found that reassuring if you weren't already on board. So, I mean, he was talking about the 2020 election, and I mean, people heard different things. Some people seem to have interpreted him as saying that he actually lost. Where, I mean, my interpretation was that he was talking a lot about fraud and things related to fraud on the Democrat side. But he did say sort of, well, I lost by a hair or something to Joe Biden. Which, I mean, if the problem is that if he admits it on television, it sort of invalidates a lot of the things that people have been getting involved in. I think with the 2020 election, like the January 6th, the riots and the people who got put in prison for it, and all these people who have been doing the Stop the Steal and all this sort of stuff that they've been doing in retrospect to try to change the election result. I got the impression that a lot of people were let down by this one. See, he was also talking about Project 2025, which he said his position was that he refused to read what's in Project 2025 because he doesn't want to have an opinion on it. Like, which it's contradictory to things that he said in the past, where he's said that, well, I have read it, but I didn't care for it or something. I think RFK Jr. said recently that Trump said something like, well, it's a document made by a right-wing asshole or something. I don't have the clip currently, but I watched it a couple of hours ago. So that doesn't help, I think, for the Claremont types. Marijuana stuff. He was asked about the Joe Rogan beef. He doesn't really want to elaborate. A lot of these questions, it's basically he's asked the question and he just pivots away from the topic and just starts talking about.
Yeah, but the thing is, because the person asking him the questions is Lex Fridman, then it just goes nowhere. It's so strange.
And they're talking about the UFOs, the Epstein client list.
Yeah, I saw clips of the UFO stuff.
And of course, he was asked about religion as well, and he does answer the question as a person who is not religious. He basically says, "Yeah, religion is good, and we need more religion." And in the United States. I mean, I'm not paraphrasing. I think that's exactly how he put it. It was not like, I'm a Christian and I think the United States should get back to its Christian roots or something. It's like, well, yeah, religion's very good if you're afraid of dying, and I think people should get more religious. Or maybe we could play a little bit of it. I hope we don't.
It's not that. Well, we'll pray that we don't get flagged.
Okay.
We have to just pause frequently, I guess.
Yeah.
One of the tragic things about life is that it ends. How often do you think about your death? Are you afraid of it?
I fucking hate this.
I have a friend who's very, very sick.
Sorry.
Wow, dude. One of the tragic things about life is that it ends. Just think about that for a moment.
Bro.
Just simmer in it, bro. Okay, sorry.
Successful. And he's in his 80s, mid 80s. And he asked me that exact same question. I turned it around. I said, well, what about you? He said, I think about it every minute of every day. And then a week later, he called me to tell me something. And he starts off the conversation by going, tick, tock, tick, tock.
Yeah.
This is a dark person, in a sense, but it is what it is. I mean, if you're religious, you have, I think, a better feeling toward it. You're supposed to go to heaven, ideally not hell, but you're supposed to go to heaven if you're good. I think our country's missing a lot of religion. I think it really was a much better place with religion.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly how he phrased it. So it's not, I mean, that's probably no surprise to anybody in the audience, but he's not, like Trump's religious status is still sort of up in the air. He just gives the same sort of contradictory answers to that question.
Which really of course do be like that. Yeah,
it'd be like that. It is what it is.
But
that's
then again,
views.
At the point where a lot of the Western countries are, religion doesn't seem to be a correlator for a lot of the things anymore that we want it to be, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a big topic.
It doesn't help the birth rates, apparently.
I don't want to get that. I mean, not on a mass scale. You can look at, you can have pockets of fundamentalist religious groups in low birth rate societies that have high birth rates, but having, like, I guess, religion in a more sort of institutionalized way doesn't seem to help much in developed first world countries. So, but yeah, I think we've done enough on Lex Fridman.
Not that I'm sort of disagreeing that, we shouldn't have a more formalized religion as a part of our society, but whenever I hear people say that, it's usually because they have some sort of goal they want to achieve with the religion, instead of just having religion, which I guess, if you're actually real about it, should be the end goal in itself.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's like, wouldn't it be nice if we could just have this? I don't really care for it myself, but it probably would be comforting.
Yeah, I'm not a Christian, but maybe if we all became, Christian, then it would be cool.
It's a bit of a lost cause, okay. I think.
Just say that it's not for me. It's fine, right?
Okay, but I think we'll take a look at the next topic. Let's see if I can just some more topics. It's the Elon versus Judge Morales saga that seems to be ongoing. So maybe, I don't know if you, I should read from this article.
I can read it if you want.
Yeah, if you're sure.
Let's see here. Brazil's Supreme Court has upheld a ban on social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter. The judges vote unanimously in favor of the measure, meaning the ban will stay in place. X has been suspended in Brazil since the early hours of Saturday after it failed to appoint a new legal representative in the country before a court-imposed deadline. It is the latest development in a feud between Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes and X's owner Elon Musk, which began in April, when the judge ordered the suspension of dozens of accounts for allegedly spreading disinformation. Justice Moraes had called for the 5-member panel to rule on the suspension, which has caused division in Brazil. One of the justices, Flavio Dino, argued that, quote, freedom of expression is closely linked to a duty of responsibility. Quote, the first can't exist without the second, and vice versa, he added. Reacting to the decision to ban X, Mr. Musk earlier said, quote, free speech is the bedrock of democracy, and an unelected pseudo-judge in Brazil is destroying it for political purposes. In his ruling, Justice Moraes gave companies, including Apple and Google, a 5-day deadline to remove X from its app stores and block its use on iOS and Android devices. He added that individuals on businesses that are found to still be accessing X using virtual private networks, VPNs, could be fined $50 Brazilian. Is that it?
Yeah, it's about $9,000 is what they said. So yeah, it's quite hefty sum to go shitposting.
Yes. X closed its office in Brazil last month, saying its representative had been threatened with arrest if she did not comply with orders it described as, quote, censorship, which it said was illegal under Brazilian law. Justice Moraes had ordered that X accounts accused of spreading disinformation, many of which belong to supporters of the former right-wing president Jair Bolsonaro, must be blocked while they are under investigation. Brazil is said to be one of the largest markets for Mr. Musk's social media network. With access to X blocked, many Brazilians have been turning to microblogging platform Blue Sky as an alternative. Blue Sky announced on Saturday that it had registered 500,000 new users in the South American country over the 2 previous days alone. Among those pointing followers to his Blue Skies account was Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who on Thursday tweeted links to his social media accounts on platforms other than X. Lula's Blue Sky profile was top of the list, which also included links to his Instagram, WhatsApp, Threads, TikTok, and Facebook accounts. Blue Sky CEO Jay Graber expressed her delight at the influx of new users, posting in Portuguese and English, "Good job, Brazil, you made the right choice."
So there's a couple of interesting details about this because Elon Musk, look at his timeline here, he's completely obsessed with this Judge Moraes character here. Like, it seems like every other post he comes up with is this. He puts these sort of unflattering photos of him looking like Darth Vader or Voldemort, or like this. He's going really hard on the Harry Potter memes. So one of the things he has done is to create what's called the Moraes files, where he's putting up all of these documents or evidence, quote unquote, and sort of what he thinks is unlawful conduct from Judge Moraes in order to get him indicted. And this seems to have been a sort of campaign where he's been pushing for getting signatures for an indictment. This has already happened. Like, they've been able to get over 1 million signatures. And that's from Bolsonaro fans, as you're seeing here, because he was the losing candidate in the last election, and a lot of the accounts that the judge wanted censors are sort of accounts that are associated with his camp. So it's so he's just been going out in the full feud against him in a sense, and I'm interested in seeing where it's going to go. From my perspective, he doesn't seem to actually have a case, and I'll explain why. The first interesting thing is that this X arrangement that Judge Moraes was asking for is something that X already has in other countries. Turkey has it in a sense that they have limited Twitter, and they have the ability to sort of slow down Twitter or shut off Twitter in certain situations, as well as content censorship. Saudi Arabia has the same arrangement, and Russia has the same arrangement with Twitter. So it's not like it's not fully blocked, but they have the opportunity to either throttle traffic in what they think is critical situations, and censor specific type of content that's not regime friendly. So I'm a little bit puzzled as to like Elon Musk's particular beef with Brazil, as to why he would not just comply with these demands as he has done for these other people, and why he just wants to bang the freedom of speech drum for this in this particular case. And because the Brazilian user base for Twitter is actually quite big. I think I read somewhere that they have say about the 3 to 5% of Twitter users are Brazilian, and that constitutes about let's say like it's about 5% of their revenue, which is going to be over like 100 million annually lost, just as a sort of an estimate. I just asked ChatGPT to give me an estimate of how much revenue they would get from Brazil. But it's just like, okay, you're losing. Twitter is already, it seems to be a money-losing platform. And as we talked about in the previous stream, he has other shareholders. Like he was forced, he just owns half of Twitter. Like there are other people, venture capital firms and larger investors that have a stake in this. So from like this rational shareholder point of view, it's not entirely clear what is going to be achieved here, because this seems to be very much a sort of political vendetta that he has against Brazil in particular. I mean, I see that he's putting in a lot of effort as well to get this stuff underway. I'm just not sure what kind of case he has. I mean, Elon Musk has a pretty large fan following, and the narrative that's being pushed here, it's like this is like patriotism versus globalism, but it's in the inverse. It's like, Elon Musk, that is the tech billionaire platform owner who is pushing his kind of political stuff on Twitter, is the patriot, and the Judge Moraes, who is like a Brazilian Supreme Court justice who wants to protect Brazil from the stuff on that platform, is a globalist. Yeah. And it's a little bit confusing, to be honest, but I think a lot of these kind of MAGA-tards, sort of Elon brains, are not too interested in the details. I'm looking for good arguments when I'm reading through these threads and people are talking about it. I just can't find a single substantive thing that they can actually put forward. Maybe some other people know exactly what case he thinks he has here, but I mean, my point is just, it would have been very simple for Elon Musk to comply with these things and just have that revenue stream and maintain that relationship. But instead, he's sort of gone on the witch hunt, where I feel like he doesn't actually have a case. And
I mean, even in the thumbnail for this, I put, let me see, he was like tweeting something about, let me see here. He's tweeting about, of course, now I can't find it. He's like tweeting about how he's basically just going to invade Brazil via capital. Like capitalism's just going to take control of Brazil. And you said, it's like inverse globalism.
They have Starlink in Brazil as well, and Moraes is already on the way, like trying to sanction and squeeze Starlink. So it's it's very bizarre as to what's going to happen here, and that the sort of rightoid narrative on this, it's the globalist judge in Brazil here, or whatever, is is going to lose to the freedom of speech patriots, or it's absolutely bizarre. It sort of seems like Elon Musk is just trying to bully his way into this country with his platform. And I mean, there's been other institutions, like international institutions like the EU, for example, who have given similar messaging to Elon in terms of disinformation, censorship, moderation on the platform, and so on. And he generally just tells them to go F themselves pretty much every time. And because the EU is the EU, that's like a slow, democratic, obstructionist mess, then they're not doing anything. But it doesn't seem like the good judge has any restrictions like that. I was actually a little bit impressed that he just shut it off. He said to Elon, you have 24 hours to pick a new justice, and to pick a new representative. And if you don't do this, I'm just going to shut down Twitter. And he actually did it. I don't think Musk expected it, to be honest. He sort of used to be able to just, he gets these nudges from these institutions, and he just tells them to go F off, or sends them a lawsuit. But this time he actually stood up, and he set sort of a precedent that, no, I'm just going to do this. My prediction is that the Moraes is going to buck-break Elon over time, because he just doesn't have a case. I mean, Elon has enough of these running court cases already. It's kind of ridiculous, actually, if you just look up on ChatGPT the amount of legal cases that Elon is involved in currently, both with governments or regarding fraud or harassment or these various things. It's actually more than Trump, surprisingly. So I don't know how much energy or time he has to sit and spend on all these things, and how, if there's going to be somebody else who points at him and says that, okay, maybe you don't want to spend your time doing this, you can just comply with these demands and we'll pretend nothing happened. So at least that's my prediction. I'm interested in seeing how far he's going to go with this, and I'm not sure. I just think he's going to break because he doesn't have any legal standing at all. If he does win, it basically sets the precedent that you can be kind of an international tech billionaire and sort of bully your way into certain countries with your platform, which is interesting. I mean, and you will be shared on by these rightoid types who complained about that stuff in 2020. It's an interesting world. Yeah. Let's see here. I think we've done enough on that one. So the last one I want to look at was the Tenet Media.
Tenet Media being
there was a press
US,
a press release that's come out recently from the Department of Justice. I don't know if you want to read it.
I can read it. That's fine. Yeah. You're going to have to zoom in a little bit, though. That's better. All right. Employees of Russian state-controlled media outlet deployed nearly $10 million to publish RT-curated content, which I think is Russia Today.
Yes.
Which garnered millions of views through a Tennessee-based online content creation company. An indictment charging Russian nationals Konstantin Kalashnikov, 31, also known as Kostya, and Elena Afanasieva, 27, also known as Lena, with conspiracy to violate the Foreign Agents Registration Act, the FARA, and conspiracy to commit money laundering was unsealed today in the Southern District of New York. Kalashnikov and Afanasieva are at large. Quote, the Justice Department has charged 2 employees of Russia Today, a Russian state-controlled media outlet, in a $10 million scheme to create and distribute content to U.S. audiences with hidden Russian government messaging, said Attorney General Merrick B. Garland. Quote, the Justice Department will not tolerate attempts by an authoritarian regime to exploit our country's free exchange of ideas in order to covertly further its own propaganda efforts, and our investigation into this matter remains ongoing. Our approach to combating foreign malign influence is actor-driven, exposing the hidden hand of adversaries pulling strings of influence from behind the curtain, said Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco. As alleged in today's indictment, Russian state broadcaster Russia Today and its employees, including the charged defendants, co-opted online commentators by funneling them nearly $10 million to pump pro-Russian propaganda and disinformation across social media to U.S. audiences. The department will not tolerate foreign efforts to illegally manipulate American public opinion by sowing discord and division. Covert attempts to sow division and trick Americans into unwittingly consuming foreign propaganda represents attacks on our democracy, said FBI Director Christopher A. Wray. Today's actions show that as long as foreign adversaries like Russia keep engaging in hostile influence campaigns, they're going to keep running into the FBI. We will continue to do everything we can to expose the hidden hand of foreign adversaries like Russia and disrupt their efforts to meddle in our free and open society. The Russian government has long sought to sow discord and chaos in the United States through propaganda and foreign malign influence campaigns, said Assistant Attorney General Matthew G. Olson, the Justice Department's National Security Division. As alleged, the covert operations by Russia Today employees exploited our free and open press and targeted millions of Americans as unwitting victims of Russia's psychological warfare. As alleged, the Russian state broadcaster orchestrated a massive scheme to influence the American public by secretly planting and financing a content creation company on U.S. soil, said U.S. Attorney Damian Williams for Southern District of New York. The instruments of that scheme were Russia Today employees Kalashnikov and Afanasieva, who managed the operation from Moscow using fake personas and shell companies. And the victims of the scheme were the American people, who received Russian messaging without knowing it. As the charges unsealed today demonstrate, this office will work with our law enforcement partners to unmask and hold accountable all those who conduct malign influence campaign in the United States, no matter how hard they try to hide their tracks. According to the court documents, Russia Today, RT, formerly known as Russia Today,
I don't think we need to read the whole thing. I mean, there's a lot of sort of formality.
Yeah.
things here, but yeah, there's some parts
I
of this
have one
that
that sums up like the names of some of the
yeah, we can look at the websites here because I have we can just go and look at because what this is, it's a company that's named Tenet, right? That this is done through, that sort of worked as a proxy for Russia Today. So here we go. This is the company Tenet Media. This is what $10 million in like rubles will get you. Here we have some familiar faces. We got Laura Southern here, Dave Rubin, Tim Pool, like Benny Johnson is on the far left side there. So some of these people I knew from before, some of them I didn't. I mean, this sort of conservative influencer sphere is a lot bigger. I always keep finding like new characters that have, followings of like 2 to 3 million people I had never heard of until now. So there's a large appetite for this. If you look at this sphere of whether it's like the Daily Wire or the Blaze Media kind of stuff. So they have a video here. Maybe we could play the about video.
Sure.
I think I've pissed off basically everybody. That's what happens when you're a free thinker.
Free speech is under attack that we self-censor. Maybe they take us down individually. It's a lot harder to do when we're grouped together in this way.
When the media says dissident or anti-establishment, I mean, when I hear it, I think base, very cool.
Independent media, actual media's most important job is holding these people accountable.
The challenge for all of us is to not be passive participants in letting the country slip away.
So that's very nice. There's a reason that every time I use the word, like what do you call independent journalist, I just use like massive quotes around it, just like independent. It's just every fucking time like these people, these free thinkers and independent journalists show up. There's a lot of this going on, to be honest. Let's see if they have some more sites. I think
the thing is, people in the chat are posting coal or that, these guys suck. But the problem is that they're reaching out to a lot of Americans. I mean, if I just go to Tim Pool on YouTube, how many subscribers does he have just on YouTube?
He's got over 1 million there. I think he's like 1.5 million or something.
Yeah.
When I looked at, so meet the talent.
How many does he have on Spotify, and how many people does Dave Rubin reach? I mean,
these have pretty big reach, right? So Lauren Southern is there, Tim Pool, Tyler Hansen, Matt Christensen I've never seen before. This Benny Johnson character I haven't. Rubin we talked a little bit about the sort of like, this was a bit of a surprise in terms of the content. Tim Pool, not so much. I mean, just we could look at some of the sums that these people were offered, by the way, because 10 million, it's quite a lot of money for this type of an operation. So these people were offered, like, they had different contracts, but the average deal, it's like they would get $100,000 for one video, and they would have like 4 videos per month.
Any
or something, or maybe
videos?
2 videos per month. No, they were just told you need to make content that's sort of critical of the U.S. government or critical of aid to Ukraine or these types of things, and we'll just pay you like $1 million per video, in a sense. I mean, it's like that's like
if I got that contract,
not $1 million.
I
Sorry,
would
not
be like, this is kind of suspicious.
Yeah, no, it's sorry. It's $100,000. I'm mixing Norwegian and American currency here.
Oh yeah.
Because like if in Norway that would have been 1 million Norwegian kroners. It's like you just start a stream. It's like if we would have streamed for 2 hours or something, and we would have gotten like 100,000. Which is more. That's a 6-figure salary, an annual 6-figure salary for like 2 hours of content that these people were offered. So there's probably a lot of people.
Is just be critical about Ukraine and don't think too hard about why I'm asking you this.
No,
just take the
I
money.
mean this. It's very interesting. So a lot of these people have just come out and said that they didn't know this, right? That they were sort of unwitting. Laura Chen, that is a sort of famous right-wing influencer that's been affiliated with Nick Griffin. She's one of the founders of this company, so she clearly knew this, and she has been dropped from Blaze Media, by the way, which is something I also didn't know, that there's a lot of these people who work for Blaze Media. Dave Rubin works for Blaze Media, and Benny Johnson as well. So they're employed there, which is the same company that Arnold McIntyre works for. McIntyre immediately went out and just denied it. By the way, on Twitter, just basically said that like the DOJ is not trustworthy and this is sort of a hoax. But apparently they believed it enough to fire people from the company. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, as far as maybe we could look at their YouTube channel. See, I just need to see exactly. And it's not anything crazy. I think that's what caught a lot of people off guard here, because you see the viewership numbers on these videos. It's not very high. It's like maybe like 11K views.
Are we sort of accounting what Tenet Media are publishing on YouTube, or are we talking about what these people are like tweeting, right? Because I think that's where the real damage is sort of done. Like Dave Rubin will do a video for Tenet Media, which is then going to influence his tweets, right?
Yeah, I assume that if you're being paid like 100,000 per video to be critical of Ukraine, you're probably going to stick to that line quite a bit.
Exactly.
It would have been, you would probably be concerned that they're going to close the tap if you go away from that line. In a sense, but I mean that's been a sort of pedantic. It's something that I wanted to go through when we looked at some of the details, because you have some of these copers who are showing up, like David Sachs, who have all these kind of more sophisty type, extremely sort of pedantic ideas, like, oh well, this it can't be real because if they're only reaching, if you look at their video, if they're only reaching 6,000 people here, then that's too much money for the Russians to spend on this type of thing. And because I wouldn't do that as an investor, that means that it's a hoax or something. That's basically been the defense from that I've seen with a lot of people. So it's something that I'm going to comment a little bit more on, but I'm just going to look at some of these other. There's another thread here that detailed a little bit more about
Tim Pool wears beanie in the shower.
See, there is a Twitter thread here that kind of summarizes things a little bit. So here, breaking Kremlin agents in the US with millions of Twitter followers are paid $10 million by Russia to spread disinformation and rally support for convicted felon Trump. Yeah, I mean, of course, this guy is obviously biased against Trump, but he had some details because I didn't take the time to read all of the indictment. But there's some people who have summed up some of the information in there, so we're gonna have to. At least I hope that it's accurate. If not, I'll have to redact the stuff that I've said here. But you could look at these people. Benny Johnson, I'd never heard of. He has like 2.7 million followers. Tim Pool, 2.1 million. Rubin, 1.5. Laura Southern, she's at a measly 500,000. So there we go. And they said, because in this document they're using terms like Party A, Party B, Candidate A, Candidate B, and Influencer 1, 2, 3, and so forth. Say the talking points. The U.S. Kremlin agents were told to dismantle by Russia in exchange for $10 million to help Donald Trump in the upcoming election. So here we go. Campaign topics. That they wanted encroaching universal poverty, record inflation, halting economic growth, and affordable prices. Risk of job loss for white Americans, privileges for people of color, perverts and the disabled. This is very Russian, by the way. This is like I watch some of these, like I follow some of these accounts on Twitter, like Moscow News and stuff, where it's just I have to watch with like a translation on to see, but that's the kind of language that they're using. It was like we're here in Canada. It becomes
very anachronistic, sort of the way it's translated.
Here in Canada, they give all money to perverts, and the white people starve on the street. It's the kind of the standard, the way they're presenting things. Constant lies of the U.S. political party B. So it's that's the Democratic Party. Okay, so it's the lying about the Democrat Party. Threat of crime for people of color and immigrants, including new immigrants from Ukraine. Yes. Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, that's going to be a talking point. So they have
like into the U.S. How many immigrants?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how many refugees they're taking, but they're pushing that. The Ukrainian immigrants are they're taking their jobs, and they're creating a crime wave. overspending on foreign policy at the expense of white U.S. citizens, constant lies to voters by the Democrat Party. Last but not least, America is suffering.
I think we've taken more Ukrainian refugees than the U.S. has.
Yeah,
not to
I
mention
mean,
sort of the current sort of immigration crisis going on in the South.
it doesn't have any.
It
doesn't have to have anything to do with the truth, but there's a certain points that they want to ingrain in here when people are thinking about these issues. So, target audience, it's the Republican voters, see Trump supporters of traditional family values, white Americans representing the lower and middle class. So it's a sort of weaponization of the flyover state Americans. Let's see. I had some more interesting stuff here. There's this clip where people, this guy who's did a 4chan post summarizing some of the stuff that was actually in the indictment document in the 4chan green text. So, see, the Russians asked Chen to recruit Benny Johnson, Tim Pool to make some content and offered them $2 million a year each. Johnson said he wanted $5 million. Pool demanded $100K per episode. Tim Pool spoke to a Russian agent pretending to be a Hungarian businessman on a secure call. Benny Johnson would unknowingly work for the Russians for $400K a month in exchange for 4 monthly videos plus $100K signing bonus. Pool also agreed to $100K video, but no bonus. Weak negotiating skills. Russians wanted them to post the Tucker Carlson grocery video, but they thought it was too obviously shilling. This is real, actually. I saw the cutout of this. It's in the document that they were talking about.
They're on to us, Ledick. You're being propaganding too hard against Tucker Carlson now.
Should we post the Tucker Carlson grocery video? Like, the Russians thought that it was too obvious to post. Like, it's not. And well, I mean, it kind of is. If you watch Russia Today, they're very mindful about kind of creating a veneer of serious journalism. Like, Tucker sort of overdoes it a little bit. I think he doesn't know how to sell it all the time. It gets a little bit too goofy for them. So the Russians wanted to be.
Spencer keeps posting like a photo of Tucker holding the bread in the supermarket. Wait, where is it?
Yeah.
Here it is. I'll send it to you in the private chat. You can bring it up.
Here. Just a minute.
Such a good photo.
It's the cheap bread lines here. Yeah, I mean, it was one of the clips that was posted from with Tim Pool, something that's put out recently, just to kind of underline the kind of the direction some of his rhetoric has taken. I mean, it's been like this for a long time, but this kind of stuff.
Yeah, before we get into that, I got some question about, if we have a thing against Russia because of history. I mean, certainly if you live in Finland, you probably do. Does Lodic have a Finnish or Swedish ancestry? That would explain his dislike of Russia. Well, this is more.
Yes.
I'm not going to probably, but I'd also like to say that Lodic is sort of focusing on this. I guess partly because no one else is.
Well, there are other people who are doing it, by the way. But I mean, my thesis is really, as I said in the Russian narrative episode, that the general Western right wing has just become completely infiltrated with Russian influence.
Well,
to the point where
let's say it's influenced with influence from a lot of camps.
Yes,
but
Israel as well. I think those are the two big ones. It would be Israel and Russia, and people who are taking money and
sifting through all of that is going to take a lot of work.
It's creating incentives essentially for creating a kind of right wing that it's completely kind of loony, and it only serves foreign interests. I would prefer to have like an actual right wing that served Western interests, but that's it's apparently too much to ask because people are just too interested in sitting and shilling for Putin or Netanyahu or something like that. It's quite fascinating. So I mean,
and
you could just look at
say like, oh, I would like neither, but then again, we're also not in power, and we don't have the money to buy our own shills. So for now, we're going to have to notice who we can and cannot trust, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, we'd have to have pretty deep pockets to
Yeah.
get someone like Tim Pool if he wants $100,000 for one episode. But
Exactly.
yeah, this is the kind of stuff that you get for $100,000 for an episode.
Bingle says, I had a feeling Ludwig's dislike of Russia went deep. Well, I mean, if you ask Burkharl, I think his goes deeper. So,
see here.
But I don't know that it matters anymore. This is psychotic. Ukraine is the enemy of this country. Ukraine is our enemy, being funded by the Democrats. I will stress this again. One of the greatest enemies of our nation right now is Ukraine. They are expanding this war. Now, don't get me wrong. I know you've got criminal elements of the U.S. government pushing them and guiding them and telling them what to do. Ukraine is now accused, a German warrant issued for blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, triggering this conflict. Ukraine is the greatest threat to this nation and to the world. We should rescind all funding and financing, pull out all military support, and we should apologize to Russia.
This is perfect. I mean, this is
apologize to Russia.
It could basically be something that goes on Russian state TV, like these people like Vladimir Solonoy and the talk shows where he just talks about nuking the United Kingdom or something. I mean, it's like this kind of rhetoric where he's sitting, like he's literally hammering the table, saying Ukraine is the enemy. We're really hamming it up here for you know, but this is what I mean with the incentives. You know, these people are just being basically paid millions of dollars to sit and say this stuff to their audience, right? And I'm just kind of pointing that out as a perverse thing, and people don't understand why that's a kind of an issue. I mean, if you don't, my view is that like Israel and Russia are sort of problem. It's really sort of the same type of problem in my view, where they have the same corrupting influence on the right wing. And I don't know why people insist on creating a sort of split there. Usually the split is something like they will okay, they're very clear on Israel being bad, but they're not clear on Russia being bad. The problem is that if you're taking that line categorically, you're putting yourself in a bit of a bind, because those people will typically, they'll just say stuff like, well, you know, Benjamin Netanyahu has a warrant out by the International Court of Justice for genocide, for killing civilians or something like this. And, you know, well, isn't it hypocritical that you're not enforcing that stuff? But then again, Putin has the same thing. But he has a warrant out by the ICJ for kidnapping hundreds of Ukrainian children. And when they hear stuff like this, they'll just like, nah, that didn't happen. No, then the ICJ is basically a fraud. Like everything the Russians been accused of by the International Court of Justice in terms of human rights violation, that didn't actually happen. It's only true when it's pointed towards Israel. It's sort of similar things that are going on in terms of human rights violations, where they will accept the Israeli ones and they will not accept the Russian ones, even though the Russians are doing it to like probably some of the whitest people on the planet. And these people who call themselves like right wing, they just sort of scoff at it. They basically run defense for these sort of mongoloid mixed race barbarians who are just kind of like slaughtering white people in Ukraine by the mass. For what reason exactly? It's sort of, they won't even bat an eyelid when the Russians are shelling children's hospitals in Ukraine. They talk about like they cry about brown kids in Israel, but when the same thing is happening in Russia, it's sort of like, no, it didn't actually happen, and it was actually USA's fault, or it was Norway's fault, or so some of these kind of nonsensical things that they just always go to. So,
but Marcellus von Hohenheim says Ukraine with its Jewish leader and American backers, and Russia, who to choose from. Well, and that's the weird thing, right? Because suddenly, you know, Macron talking about he wants to build an independent EU, as weird as it sounds, is kind of starting to sound a bit appealing, right? Well, maybe we can do it on our own, right? If we can sort of carve out our own truth sphere, then this would be better. But of course, that's a bit of a long shot.
Well, I mean, yeah, people just have to make their own decisions there. I just have basically like these people who are unapologetic Russia supporters. I find it extremely sus. And it's usually based on some type of just kind of misunderstanding, in my view, of the situation. Either that they're like Tim Pool here, and they're being paid money to sit and say this, or they're they basically have just completely sort of misunderstood Russia, which most people tend to do. Quite frankly, I wrote a long Twitter thread on it, but I'll try to explain, like, I think some of the misunderstandings just quickly. That'll just be kind of the end of the episode here. Like David Sachs wrote this tweet about, they paid $10 million to get 6,000 views per videos, and that doesn't make any sense. And now Putin has come out and said that he supports Kamala Harris, right? Because this is something that happened recently as well. So, which one is it, liberals? Do they want Trump in, or do they want Biden in, or? And he's thinking about this in terms of, like, there's the Russians have one clear objective that they want to achieve with this. Like you would think if you were a Westerner. It's like, okay, I have a goal with this, and I have a certain budget, and I'm going to get this person elected because they have something that I want, and which it's really sorry, I'm a little bit dry. I need to drink.
No worries. Celtic Perspective says, I wonder what these shells think they're getting out of this other than money. What does Russia winning this war do for you? Well, one part of this is, you take the 10 million and you don't think about the repercussions of what they're asking you to do. The second one is that they're in America and they don't have to deal with any consequences of Russia expanding, right?
Okay. I want you to think about, like, Russia, because the right tends to just kind of project themselves onto Russia. They, if they're Christian, they think that all Russians are Christian. If they're nationalists, they think that all Russians are nationalists. If they, it's like this very tiresome. So I'm trying just to stop this video here, but tiresome triad with projecting, like, these are my values and thinking that Russia shares those values, which is, it's really just not the case at all. And you know this because they just have a completely different way of thinking about things. Look at this case right here, for example. Like, refugees are biking into Norway from a tiny remote Russian Arctic border. Like the frozen barren landscape of Russia's Arctic Circle, blanketed with snow, has temperatures that are well below freezing. Cutting through the cold, refugees on bicycles pedal through the snow towards the Russian-Norway border and toward what they hope will be a better life. Russia doesn't allow people to cross this border on foot, and drivers aren't allowed either in Norway carrying people without documents, which is why the refugees cross with bicycles. Even those that manage to reach the border by car must have a bike to make the final crossing. So this is like, Russia has been doing this to Norway. They've been doing this to Finland. They've been doing this to Poland through Belarus. And it's really sort of, it's weaponizing refugees and sending them in there. And you're thinking from, like, if you are like this kind of rational machine Western person who think about that, I want the ROI on my investment. What is the reason for doing something like this? Just think about, like, you have to sit and organize fleets of refugees and figure out the laws of these sort of things. So you organize the refugees and you have to give them bicycles and give them proper orders, and, like, okay, just keep flowing into the Norwegian borders on bicycles. And okay, so what's the thinking there? Is this something that is easily rationally explained? I mean, it really isn't. There's no sort of, like, Western model for this that makes any sense, especially when you also consider that, like, they had these clips from the Polish border where these Polish border guards are going out with guns and shooting these refugees, and the people who love Russia are like, yeah, look at based Poland, who are, like, protecting their border from them sending refugees from this this country that we also support. But and also Russia supports, like, usually the most right-wing parties in those countries as well that are against the refugees, right? So it immediately doesn't make any sense. And the first question is, what do you make of this stuff? Is this an act of aggression, right? Or weaponize the refugees an act of aggression? Because Norway is a NATO country, and Russia is its neighbor. So if Norway is basically attacking, if Russia is attacking Norway with refugees, does this trigger Article 5? I mean, do you have any thoughts on this?
Does that trigger? I mean, can you attack with refugees? I guess they found, like, a weird loophole, right?
Well, if you don't want these refugees and they keep sending them to your border, right? What do you consider that? This is a form of hybrid warfare, and that's really a part of the way that the Russians
do you really want to open that can of worms? Because then suddenly you're giving, like, the UK cost of attack on France.
Well, yeah, are the French sending them refugees on bikes or something?
I mean, a lot of the refugees are crossing from France.
They're crossing,
right?
but they're not being sent deliberately by the
Well,
French.
I mean,
it's not
then
it's
you
not
know
like
the burden of
okay.
proof is on the accuser, right?
Yeah, it is. But I mean, this is something that they stopped by basically contacting Putin and said that he should stop doing it, and then they stopped coming. I mean, you have other examples of this as well. See, GSP, GPS jamming, Norway. Like this one here, like Russian jamming is now messing up GPS signals for the Norwegian activation practically every day. So this is something that they were doing in actually quite recently. And like in northern Norway, Russia was jamming GPS signals, which means that it messed up the flight schedules and made it difficult to do things for machines that use the GPS. I mean, is this aggression? Do you think this would trigger Article 5?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess they're, masters at testing, what does and doesn't trigger Article 5, right?
Well, exactly. And this is how they act. You have to understand that Russia does not think of the world like the West. If you think of it as like you could reach mutual cooperation and like we could both get better. And because that's been sort of the Western foreign policy after the Second World War, like the sort of liberal world order is really built on the idea of we're going to have mutual cooperation through these international institutions. Everybody's going to be, liberal, building the economy, line goes up. Everybody's happy, right? We just offshore jobs, send it here. Then the thinking is that because everybody has an increased standard of living, then that's going to lead to peace that will last. But Russia has never been a part of that project, and they've never wanted to be a part of that project. And their entire approach to foreign policy is the exact opposite. It is really a zero-sum game, meaning that they think that if other countries are worse off, then they're better off. So they're not thinking about trying to help the United States or helping Norway, helping Finland become better in any way. They're always looking for ways that they could throw more wrenches into the cogs of those countries by doing stuff like this and testing kind of, okay, if I poke my finger in your eye, do you react? If I throw some sand in your face, are you going to react? And just seeing how much they can get away with in order to just kind of test the waters. And they have the same approach as well to their participation in organizations, say like the UN, for example. They have a seat on the UN Security Council that they can never be kicked out of, whereas they can veto UN decisions, and they do so continuously to their own advantage. They have no interest in sort of actually trying to help the UN preserve peace, for example, as is very clear when you see in Ukraine or Georgia or some of these other places where they've invaded. But they want to use the UN's veto power to stop other countries from sanctioning them. They like to use these Western tools like, Western economies where they can stash away their money, or Western institutions that they can use to hamstring the West because they have to follow. They feel like they have to follow these rules, whereas the Russians don't give a shit about them. But this is really more or less kind of the Russian approach to foreign policy, that they're continuously engaged in this hybrid warfare against the West. Whereas they're using things like electronic attacks, sabotage, assassination, diplomatic harassment, and these types of tools to just see how much they can get away with, and to find where there's weaknesses in the West so that they can attack, basically. And that's there is essentially there's no cooperating with this.
What do you define attack as? Like, at what point does Russia become what they would consider aggressive?
Well, the liberals that have actually been trying to liberalize Russia have gone through this loop of sort of they try to bring Russia into the fold. They try to establish communications with Russia, and Russia does shit like this, and they invade countries and they say, okay, we'll forget about it and we'll try again. And they've been doing this for more or less 30 years. And that's where you're getting people like, these sort of Russia hawks like Hillary Clinton or Macron, or these.
We're going to have to decide whether or not appeasement is good enough with Russia, right?
Yeah, but that's the problem. Like the liberals are sort of ahead of the curve on this one, and saying that there's no point in doing appeasement, and that's why they're running the Ukraine policy that they are running. Whereas the conservatives have now come, and they're always like 30, 20 years late, and saying that no, we need to talk to Russia, we need to sit down and have like have a tea and coffee and talk to Putin and meet. And they don't really understand that like Western leaders have been trying to do this for 30 years, and it's just resulted in more of this bullshit. And every time they try to sort of reset the relationship, it just goes back to the same thing. I mean, it's a lot of this is like the wine party sketch. If you've seen $1 Million Extreme with Sam Hyde and those people, where Nick Rochefort is like drinking wine with Sam Hyde's wife, and he's smashing Sam Hyde's wife's face through the glass table, and then Sam Hyde is like, "What's going on, big guy? You just tricked my wife," and he just denies it, right? And he just keeps denying it until Sam Hyde just accepts it and okay, well, I guess you didn't do it then, and that's kind of the Russia-Western relationship, essentially, where Russia does stuff like this, they deny it, and they categorically deny every single thing they've done aggressively like this. Like even the invasion of Ukraine, like you can go watch videos of Sergei Lavrov on these conferences saying, when he was asked about like the invasion of Ukraine, saying that there was no invasion happening, and that it's basically just these claims are just Russophobic to claim that there's an invasion of Ukraine when there was an actual invasion of Ukraine. And you could look at the Twitter accounts for like the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This is just what they do. They do stuff like this. They sabotage, they assassinate people, and they deny it or they blame it on the West. Even assassinations of their own political dissidents, like Navalny, for example. When they poisoned Navalny, they blamed it on MI6. Right, so it's sort of when he was just in Russia the whole time, so they blamed British intelligence for poisoning their own dissidents. It's like in the absolute absurdity of theater, but it's sort of a test to just see how much the West is going to put up with, in a sense. And conservatives that are coming to the table with this history and basically saying that no, we need to talk to Russia and we need to like establish trade. You're dealing with a bad faith actor, in a sense, and you're just sort of wasting time by coming with this kind of rhetoric. And that's sort of my view on the entire Russia situation. Let's see if I can find another one that I thought was interesting. Here, Putin.
Well, I mean, I do see your point here, but I think, I'm gonna.
Here's another one here. See, Biden presses Putin to act on ransomware attacks since that's retaliation, right? And this is basically about, Putin more or less allows criminal cyber gangs to operate in Russia with no impunity, as long as they're attacking non-Russian targets, right? So usually, as long as you're not attacking Russian businesses, he's just allowing these sort of hacker groups that are running this kind of ransomware schemes to attack people in the West. And they have a lot of people doing it, and it's the sort of thing where Biden is basically trying to tell Putin to sort of, okay, can you do something about this? And he has just categorically refused. And it's another thing that seems like, okay, is this an attack? And it seems like such a small thing, but it has a tangible effect because it raises the costs of security for running a business in the West. And it raises insurance rates for running businesses, and the businesses themselves don't have enough money to deal with this, so they invest in more security. Eventually, it just runs up costs for Western consumers, and puts money in Putin's war chest, essentially, by just running these ransomware attacks. And I mean, the people who sit and complain about this anarcho-tyranny, this is just a form of kind of digital anarcho-tyranny. If like a digital world is a sort of open playground, and Putin is just allowing his thugs to come in and steal money from Westerners, and he just refuses to do anything about it. And again, like this is the people who are saying,
interest to not do anything about it, right? The same way it would be in the interest of Western governments to act the same way if they had cyber criminals attacking Russia, right?
Yeah, they would do so, but you have to realize that you're tarnishing your reputation by doing it, which Russia doesn't care about. And that's kind of the difference, is that they don't give a shit that the West doesn't like them. They just keep doing this.
The US cares that much about its reputation in geopolitics, do you think?
More than Russia, I certainly think so. I mean, much has been made of these sort of US sabotage things, but now they've, all these sort of dissident right people talking about the US doing Nord Stream when it was actually Ukraine who did Nord Stream. I mean, in terms of international relations, the U.S. has taken a nosedive, but Russia is basically now a sort of piranha state.
Do we know who did Nord Stream, like definitively?
Well, Germany put out a warrant against Ukrainians for doing it, and they've also slashed aid to Ukraine, which is a sort of indicator that at least the Germans believe that it was Ukrainians who did Nord Stream to sabotage Russian revenues.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying that you're not right. I'm just thinking that, we're sort of caught in between a rock and a hard place here, because I don't think just because the US is better at sanitizing the operations, right, doesn't mean that they're not doing them.
Yeah, but that's kind of the problem with Russia as well, is that they just don't even give a shit. They just keep doing them openly towards other countries, and they just want to continue doing this. And I mean, that's where you're getting these info things as well, like spending millions of dollars on influencers like Tim Pool so that he can yell about civil war and encourage people to secede.
Right.
States to secede, for example. I mean, this is strategies that they've been running for a long time. I think a lot of people who are on the right have this attitude that because the Russia Gate couldn't be connected directly to Donald Trump, then it's sort of like there's no reason to pay attention to it. But if you actually read the Mueller report, you would see that they found a lot of things in terms of actual Russian disinformation operations. They just weren't able to find enough evidence to connect it to Donald Trump and his campaign in 2016 directly. They found stuff like, say, Black Lives Matter accounts where they did data requests towards Facebook and found that there were a lot of domains, a lot of accounts that were registered on Facebook to Russian names, and they were paying in rubles. And they were doing stuff like organizing Black Lives Matter rallies, for example. They had accounts like groups like Blacktivist, for example, where they were doing things like posting videos of black people getting beat up by white people. No, so it's like the opposite of the Radio Genoa Iron Mas Chong stuff. In my opinion, that was kind of the testing ground for that strategy, where they were sort of radicalizing black people on Facebook by just showing them videos of black people being harassed by police. And then they were posting this info about black crime, and they were organizing Black Lives Matter rallies. And I'm not saying that this wouldn't have happened otherwise, but they were very happy to come in and try to inflame that situation and throw fuel on the fire of what was already a very tense situation. Just like we saw in the UK riots this year, where people were posting disinformation while the riots were going on to try to stoke even more animosity between groups. And this has just kind of been their MO, not just in running these disinformation campaigns, but they will run both sides of the same controversial issue. Like they were running Black Lives Matter accounts, and they were running more of these kind of Blue Lives Matter accounts on the other side. And that's where you're getting back to the David Sachs points, like, oh, well, Putin is supporting Kamala Harris, or these accounts are supporting Trump, or which one is it? Well, they're doing both sides. Their goal is just to create as much disruption in Western countries as possible.
From Russia's point of view, any destabilization of the US is good.
Yeah, they run an active, basically, policy where they're
the same would be true for the US. Any destabilization inside Russia would be good, albeit probably not have as big of an impact as the other way around.
Well, the NGOs are thrown out of Russia. Twitter is censored in Russia, and generally, because Russia has been able to tighten up their security, that it's not a symmetrical thing anymore. The US is sort of has nominally free speech, and they have these laws that they have to abide by.
So what you're saying is that we need to ban Twitter, throw the NGOs out of the West.
Well,
and,
there has to be means to curb this type of stuff. Like I don't, then that's why I don't think it's sort of wrong for someone like the Brazilian judge to ban certain accounts on Twitter, right? This is just a security issue. It's not really sort of you were banning free speech. Oh, I don't have my right to free speech absolutism. It's not free speech to do harassment and sort of targeted disinformation to destabilize. And like if I'm going into, okay, maybe it is free speech under the American Constitution, but there has to be some clause to deal with this stuff, right? And you can't just come with a defense of like, oh, I thought you were a democracy or something, when bad actors are coming in to spread disinformation during riots or natural disasters or stuff like this. It's just kind of absurd to sit and run this sort of trolley type. Well, you can't say it's a democracy if you want to ban arsonists from coming to your country or something. It's but that is the sort of standard Tucker line. When I was listening to the sort of Tucker interview that he was doing recently with Martyr Maid, that guy who does the history stuff, like they're pulling that stuff with Ukraine. Like they say Ukraine is not a democracy because they're trying to ban these sort of Russian organizations. internally.
makes sense.
It's yeah.
Then any dissident narrative gets thrown in as well. And I guess that's sort of the fallout of it, is that you don't really know which dissident narrative is actually pro your people anymore.
Well, I see the point. I'm completely aware of it. The problem is that currently I view it as like we're losing on the way the Twitter is now. Like these all these foreign agents are just running circles around us. Nobody's getting red pilled on Twitter. It's just like this mush of Candace Owens
You're no
bullshit,
longer
and,
reaching the people you need to reach on Twitter either.
It's just Jake Shields and Candace Owens and like all these sort of cartoon anti-Semite people. Like nobody's getting red pilled from QAnon. But that's what's sort of selling in this marketplace. It's not something that actually could lead to anything constructive, even from a dissident perspective, because you just get drowned out by these carnival barker types. So that's just my view. It's like, okay, we've tried free speech censorship, but what I'm seeing now is that people, even political parties in my own country, that are reposting these kind of obvious disinformation, deepfake videos, that it just makes everybody look bad. It is like kind of shitting in your own bed in a sense, and just insisting on like this Elon version of free speech absolutism is something we have to succeed. I really do think it's been a misstep. But yeah, that's the end of my rant.
Kang-san says we're getting crowded out. So in the end, I mean, at this point, with the way Twitter is going, I wouldn't mind banning it. Like I barely use it, right?
I just want moderation.
Some memes. Right? That's about it, right? There's nothing to be gained from being on Twitter anymore.
I mean, you can get news really quickly, but I just want some kind of moderation. Say, like, it doesn't even have to be that harsh. Just if somebody's posting deliberate misinformation, they could get a suspension or something, or at least like a penalty for it. But now it's just kind of a free-for-all. There's sort of no consequence to posting complete disinformation. And okay, you might get a community note, but that takes forever. And sometimes the disinformation has reached 1 million people before the community notes even appear. And even though the community note is there, like the post just remains up. So the bad actors can just kind of spray and pray all this type of bullshit constantly, and there's no consequences for it. It is like a political arsonism in a sense. Like you can just yelling fire in a crowded theater, and you can just keep doing that over and over again. And there's no stability there. There's no possibility of building up any constructive narratives or any real system critiques, when it's just QAnon bullshit.
Marcellus says, F free speech. Well, I thought we didn't like free speech around here. So, I mean, I thought everyone in this sphere was already sort of understanding that free speech is a myth anyway.
Well, I mean, you certainly do have
I don't see the issue in just being more, active in using that truth.
Yeah, again, I do believe in people having discussions, but there has to be penalties. You have to be able to close out people who are just coming there to bullshit, in a sense. Like, if I was opening a business, like a gas station or something, and some guy is just showing up there to take the free napkins so he doesn't have to buy toilet paper, I have to be there to close him out of my store, right?
You have to ban the Indians from taking the free food, right?
There has to be some way of dealing with that problem, but currently it's just kind of a sewage pit on Twitter, and you can find some gems in the horse manure, but you have to really just keep digging. And I would really like to just see it cleaned up, but I'm not sure if Elon Musk himself understands exactly what he's doing. That's kind of that's still a bit of a mystery, both him and Trump, exactly like what are they thinking, because it seems to be almost unreachable. Like you saw in the Lex Fridman interview, I don't get them. I don't understand what their motivations are. I don't understand what they're trying to do with their power or something. So I just know that it's destructive.
The moderation would take you out too. You're a bad actor who's to those who would be determining bad actors. Well, yeah, I mean, okay. So the way it works is that you advocate for free speech until you're in power, and then you remove it. I mean, that's literally how politics works.
Well, I mean, people from the dissident right or on the right wing were on Twitter before before Elon took over, right? Aaron McIntyre had a successful Twitter account before Elon, right? As long as you're able to circumvent the censorship and stay within kind of the bounds of the rules,
Fair enough,
most of these
yeah.
accounts were able to actually function, and they were functioning in an environment where they were not being drowned out by the Lucas Gages and the Jake Shields of the world. So that's just my response to that, is that okay, you put in sort of a minimum of censorship, but if you could be a little bit smart, you have like a good sort of healthy filtering effect there.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. We're at 1 hour and 25 minutes. Yeah. Anything you want to shill before we get going, Letting Path?
Nah, nothing to shill.
Nothing to shill. You can follow
Thanks
me
for
on
the
Twitter.
time. I hope everybody has a good night. And we'll see you maybe next Thursday, unless you've become a father
I mean,
by
at
then.
this
Maybe
point,
you want
it's
some time off.
looking like we're gonna have to skip next week.
Yep.
Probably. So I'll keep you posted. If you follow me on YouTube and on Twitter, you can get a message whether or not the Longhouse will go live next week. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me here on YouTube, like, comment for the algorithm. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
No.